Hello, this is Ron and Hugh. Welcome to Politically Challenged. Today we're going to talk about responsibility. As topic one regarding responsibility, we're going to talk about the anniversary of Grenfell. It's been a year and, 3 days from the date of recording since the Grenfell incident. We believe that we should talk about that and
As well as other issues, but we'll start with Grenfell because of the date.
okay, so we'll start with Grenfell because of that. In my opinion, I believe that regardless of who was to blame, so to speak, I believe that more could have been done regarding the incidents. Obviously, the glaring issues, not just with the management of the building, but also with the reconstruction. Perhaps if different things had changed, some lives could have been saved and some deaths could have been prevented. For instance, of course, we all heard about the cladding. That wasn't, it was partly made of aluminium, and people were talking about how it was made from plastic, according to some sources, but the cladding altogether wasn't fireproof. So
It wasn't effective, it wasn't efficient, it was...
It was supposed to be rainproof, but not fireproof, which is, in hindsight, not the greatest idea if people are living in that.
Yeah, it's a stupid idea when you think about gas cookers and stuff in general.
Exactly. I mean, of course, when we first heard about the story, it turned out that a faulty fridge had caused the spark that made the fire happen. But in hindsight, it was a number of issues. I mean, we heard about the stories from the residents living in the tower block, not just complaining, but lobbying to the tenants management organization that ran the tower block.
Who were they? Chelsea?
The Kensington Chelsea Tenants Management Organization, the KCTMO. So the residents of Grenfell had, asked the people that run that organization to improve the safety, and they had actually warned them about a possible fire outbreak 3 years prior to the Grenfell incidents, and according to them, the pleas fell on deaf ears, as according to one article that we looked at.
What is weird is that before, in 2016, I forgot the date, probably August, when we went to see Suicide Squad, not relevant, but a building was on fire next to it, and because of a faulty washing machine dryer, and the whole road in Shepherd's Bush, that area was cordoned off. By that building, no one died, nothing happened. So it's kind of weird how that building was fine, and this building, so many people died. So it's a case of inconsistency as well.
Perhaps.
You remember when that building was closed down, right?
No, I remember, yes. The main issue is we could blame a faulty appliance, we can blame cladding, but I feel as if this should be a lesson in taking responsibility. So, of course, you had the people that were running the organization that were running that managed the tower block. We also had the housing committee that the residents lobbied to, and apparently they didn't do much. Apparently, that's according to some of the residents, or some of the sources quoting the residents. Nothing can be said for sure.
And we could talk about the housing crisis after Grenfell, where people are homeless and...
Yes, a lot of the people having to sleep on the streets. Well, not the streets, but sleeping in nearby places. Homes weren't found for them. I think even up until recently, I read an article that people still hadn't found homes.
I remember a very sad case where a man was after Grenfell, loads of people were they put in temporary hotel rooms, and one of the guys, he was on his own, and he got a call saying that they've got this good place for him, a really good place for him, and if he doesn't say yes now, he'll lose it. And then he went from a relatively comfortable hotel room into a terrible bed sit all on his own, and he's basically last time I checked, he was just stuck there for ages, and it was on the news, BBC News, and he was fine, but I think the gist of it, it seemed like people who were in charge of it just didn't want to pay for his hotel room for much longer. So it was a case of they couldn't be bothered to, and they just wanted to put him in something cheaper. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
It's a case of
I'm having an epiphany. It is This does sound like another depressing topic. Let's try to spin this. We've all read the stories. We've all heard about the management organization, people blaming the MP involved, people blaming the old MP, the new MP, people blaming the housing committee, people blaming...
The gist of it is that people just wish the whole thing didn't happen, so they didn't have to deal with it, but it's happened, so...
That the whole thing didn't happen.
Yeah, they wish it didn't happen. That's the gist. They wish it didn't happen, but it's happened and they have to deal with it.
What we want to talk about is the topic of responsibility.
And we might as well just segue into similar with another issue I would go, but I'll just go into a similar issue. Hillsborough, 1990, I think, when 96...
89.
89?
Yeah, it was in 89.
When 96, that's correct, Liverpool fans died because of poor planning. I mean, my frame of reference is basically the movie. I know some other stuff about it, but to me it does seem like a case of like poor planning, and it led to the death of 96 people and injuries of a couple hundred people.
I feel that the message we're trying to hone in on is that when it comes to areas that people are sitting in or living in, or one needs to take care that the buildings are properly constructed, one needs to take care that they're properly managed.
And events are properly planned. Properly planned.
Yes, properly planned and properly managed so that there's minimal risk of any harm to anybody living or sitting or breathing with any of these buildings. Now,
back to Hillsborough?
No. Okay, you want to talk about Hillsborough?
Yeah, it was weird because you told me how the fans were blamed for some of the things that happened.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, the thing about the football hooliganism and how Liverpool fans, and I think it was with Northern Forest, just Liverpool.
Yes.
The Liverpool fans were blamed specifically for what happened. What did you hear about it? You told me.
From what I had seen, yes, there were different reports and different stories claiming that the blame would lie, if I can speak English, that the Liverpool fans would have to be blamed for their hooliganism as opposed to the poor planning or the poor construction or the collapsing of the stadium itself. They were blaming the people and claiming that they were fighting instead of actually trying to get to the bottom of what happened.
Yeah, that was silly.
Like, there was overcrowding, but it was a football game, and obviously logic and hindsight dictates that we shouldn't blame the fans themselves. No one would do that, but at the closer to the time, people were trying to put the blame on the fans at Hillsborough, as opposed to whoever was in charge of the planning of the stadium.
Oh, I mean, like what I said, my frame of reference from Hillsborough is simply the movie and some stuff I've seen in here after. But the gist is that it was poorly planned and people died. Logic dictates that you blame people that were in charge, and obviously I think emergency services weren't allowed in, and the whole thing was mismanaged, but it seemed okay, a black and white case of a misplanned event led to the death of and injuries of certain people.
Yes, and that's a similarity with Grenfell.
But it's very simple, but it's weird that they blame the football hooliganism and the fact that I told you about the documentary I saw where loads of fans, they got letters about the incident and it was all heavily redacted, and I found that very strange. I mean, it's a football game and people got hurt and died. I mean, it's not a conspiracy. Why is it such a big palaver? I'm not sure if that's the word, but there's a lot of hoopla around it, even though just admit that you misplanned it and then deal with it. Why are you blaming other people?
You mean the big deal around covering up what happened, not the big deal about grieving for the people that died?
That's the thing. Why is it such a big deal about them hiding who was responsible? They didn't want anyone to die. Just admit that you made some mistakes and so on. I think the police and ambulance service probably didn't make the mistakes anyway, but that's in response to the mismanagement at the event. It's weird that 25, 26, how many years it's been, yes, after the event, and it's still it's not I mean, that's insane that this long after the event, people still don't know what happened. For
Yeah,
sure.
but that's
That's weird,
the
though.
families and friends of the people that perished. They were pushing for it this entire time.
Yeah, but
So you
why?
can only imagine.
Why did they have to push for this? This is in terms of like.
Because they didn't get the information that they wanted, and the relevant information that they were trying to get.
Yeah, but
obviously
people
they
had
couldn't
access
get.
to the information from the beginning.
Yes, but not the friends and family. Not all.
I
of
know,
it.
but why was the secrecy? I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, like, let them know what. I mean, you can't bring the lives of the family back, but like 20, I mean, going on 30 years now, and I mean, that's too long. I mean, like, Hillsborough, like, do we know everything that happened, basically?
No, we know as much as the information that's been revealed.
But why, though? What's this thing about hiding stuff? Like, what are they afraid of? Like, people have already died.
That's not the point. The point is, people have died. So, you got to find out as much information as possible to figure out what
I'm asking
happens.
from the position of like the management team at Hillsborough and the management team of the building. Why they're so secretive about the mistakes they made?
To limit the blame towards them.
But they are responsible, though. But they are responsible.
Yes, but think of not just the negative public image, but also the moral responsibility. If anyone would have been threatened with being sentenced for negligence, losing jobs.
I think that's people died. People died for the sake.
Exactly, and there would be a negative reaction from that.
Obviously, people died. I mean, we're in different worlds, but I just don't. I mean, like, just admit what you did. I mean, like, and obviously the secrecy. I mean, like, how little it bothers me.
Okay, sure.
I guess we might as well talk about the other thing.
Yes, another topic related to responsibility. We're going to talk about the responsibility. So yes, we're going to talk about abortion now.
Namely the Irish case. The Irish case.
Okay. Yes, namely, recently, a couple of weeks ago, obviously Ireland voted to legalize abortion, to repeal the 8th Amendment. Obviously, that's a big deal for women's rights and feminism. But we also need to talk about how it links to responsibility, because that is a topic, but most importantly, because of the responsibility.
I say it ties in together because it's the responsibility of a woman and a child and our own health and all that stuff perspective. It's that personal responsibility. These women want to have personal responsibility rather than being dictated what to do.
Okay.
I think that's fair enough.
There's the responsibility, but I feel like with such a topic, it could be misrepresented or misconstrued. So you've got conservatives and people on one end of the political spectrum, possibly the right side, so
talking about,
as in left versus right, people on the right side talking about how a woman would have the duty to keep the baby no matter what happens. But on other people, regardless of political spectrum, would argue that if for some reason the expecting mother can't have the child, whether because she doesn't have the money, or whether because she doesn't want the child, or because maybe the child was a product of rape, the sexual act that led to the child
may not be consensual.
Was not consensual, or may not have been consensual. If there's no money to help raise the child, if there's no support, and a million other different reasons.
Yeah, there's an infinite amount of reasons of not having a baby and having a baby.
People may believe that abortion is the right answer.
Yeah, but obviously
there could even be health complications for all we know.
I thought that was one of the cases where they said that in health situations it's allowed, where it's the case of the mother or the baby.
Exactly.
So yeah, the Irish, I mean, they won the vote. The women won the vote, right? So.
But the thing is, this ties into an earlier podcast of legality versus morality, because legally it was illegal, so Irish women would actually have to come here or to other countries to get an abortion and then go back to Ireland. But now they don't need to do that anymore. But morally speaking, if you don't want the child, it's up to you what you need to do.
Well, you and your possible partner.
Now, I would consider myself pro-choice only because it's down to the woman at the end of the day, because she's the one carrying the child, and as long as the child is within her, it's still her body, so she has the right to do what she wants in that situation because it's her body, therefore her rights.
I have a similar view, unless, like, if it's a woman, I have no idea, no, never met her, it's none of my business. But if I know the girl and the baby is mine, I'm not in favor of abortion. If
it were your child?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's in a situation where it's my child and she aborts the baby, I think I would walk away from the woman, to be honest, in that situation. If I obviously the situation would depend on whether or not I feel like, I mean, like, I would be pretty hurt by it, so obviously that's up to me, right? If she's allowed to do that, I'm allowed to.
Allowed to leave?
Yeah, why not?
Well, that would be your decision, but...
I mean, like, if the baby isn't mine, I have no position whatsoever.
Would you in that situation, so you're saying that if you were in that position where your partner was having a child and she didn't want the child, you would walk away from it because you wouldn't support this decision?
Yeah.
Okay. If it was your child, but if it was not your child and not your partner, then it wouldn't be your business.
Yeah, I don't want to know, to be honest.
Okay.
It's not my position to judge, really. I'd rather not know. I'm guessing you have a similar...
Do you believe that ultimately it's the right of the woman or the right of both parties since you're the father of the child?
I think it's... well, I said that. I think it's her choice ultimately, it's her body, but obviously it's my choice whether or not I could... I mean, a woman can have an abortion... A guy could be unsure about whether to keep the baby or not, and the woman says, I want an abortion, and the guy could be like, okay, your choice. But in my case, like, if I know the woman is perfectly healthy and perfectly capable of having the baby, I think, and I'd be a little hurt and be like, I can't deal with this, and I'll go.
I'm not sure what the stats are, but sometimes when a woman is pregnant, there is actually pressure from the male partner, to get rid of the baby. So the man would be telling the woman to get rid of the child.
Wait. A guy tells a girl to abort his baby?
Yeah, that
really?
Yeah, that happens.
In which situation would a guy say no to a baby? It's a miniature version of you.
I mean, I've actually spoken to at least one person. Let me say, yeah, I've spoken to one person that told me in sixth form that when he had a girlfriend and she got pregnant, he told her to abort it.
Did she?
Yeah.
And I don't like this guy already.
Well, that was a long time ago, but yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Sometimes the man would say, "Oh, you have to get rid of this baby." For many different reasons. Again, I don't know the stats.
I have no money, but either like it's a miniature version of me or her. Why would I say no to that?
Well, that's your that's a good point.
I mean, would you say no to a miniature version of you? Imagine how adorable that would be running around. Imagine if we were recording the podcast now, or a miniature version of you running around. I mean, it makes things difficult, but it would be your little baby. Like, how could you say no to that?
I wouldn't want. And if I were in that position, I wouldn't want the child to be aborted. But ultimately, it would be the woman's decision. And also, I could choose to support the decision. I could choose not to support the decision.
And also, you do know that miscarriages and stillbirths do happen, which...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's independent from this, though.
Obviously. I mean, it's a complicated... Pregnancy is not like... It's not an easy thing. Even if you decide to keep the baby, like, stuff can happen. I mean, we've known people that have had miscarriages. We don't need to tell... We don't explain much further, but it happens.
Yeah, it does happen.
Oh, in that case, no one's responsible. It just happens.
Yeah, but sometimes, okay, to summarize, sometimes the woman may want to have the abortion, but the man doesn't want her to. And sometimes it's the other way around. The man wants the woman to have the abortion, and she ends up having it partly or wholly because the man doesn't want her to have it. I mean, this was even talked about in EastEnders. If you ever watched it?
I skim in and out in EastEnders, but I don't know.
I remember a time when Stacey was pregnant with Bradley's baby, and Bradley told her to abort it because he didn't want to become the type of father that he had, which was Max. And if you watch EastEnders, we don't need to explain that. You already think. But Bradley told Stacey not to have the baby, so she got an abortion. And even Lucy, when she had the baby, well, she was going to have a baby, but she aborted it instead of giving it to Jane, which was what she wanted, which was what she was intending to do anyway. So they've covered it in the soap drama, and we know people who've had abortions in real life.
I don't.
Well, we've heard of people, at least I have. So there are many different reasons and many different components as to why someone would have an abortion. Obviously, people with strong religious faiths or people who are strongly conservative would not be pro-abortion. They would be pro-life.
I'm not conservative, but I'm not actually. My opinion. Oh wait, conservative people are against abortion.
Conservative people are more likely to be.
They're against abortion as a whole, rather than.
They're more likely to be, yes.
As a whole, rather than individual cases.
Yes, as a whole.
Well, in my situation, I'm more liberal, but in my individual cases, I think that. Okay, fair enough. This ties into responsibility because in America, there's obviously this debates. I mean, you can have an abortion there, but obviously the debate is that when a woman is in poverty, conservatives talk about how this baby has a right to live, but the welfare system in America isn't that great. I'm not saying the welfare system in England is that great, but you get benefits and different stuff. So the baby is more likely to be taken care of. That's the thing about joint responsibility. So a person says you should have this baby, but if you take the moral high ground, you should probably help that prospective young couple or young mother to actually, I mean, not completely raise the child, but like make things easier.
So if you think that somebody
social responsibility,
you're saying if there's one person who doesn't think that somebody they know should have an abortion, if you think that person, Christ,
yeah.
What you're saying is, let's say
a friend.
Hypothetically, I didn't want my friends to have an abortion. You're saying it would be my responsibility to help look after that child? I think
it'd be, yeah, I mean, like, they're your friend.
In some way.
Okay, if we have a female friend and she has a baby and she has a baby, like don't people get their friends to babysit all the time and stuff like that? And if we were richer, like you would offer them help now and again, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Because we would feel obligated
Hypothetically, yes.
We would do that.
That's if you want, yes.
If we were capable, I mean, we might have the time. I mean, we might have the money, but we can afford our time now and again. Like, okay, I'll look after him or her this afternoon, this morning, that night, whatever. Just to lessen the burden, because we might not feel attached to the baby. In your case, you might not want the baby to begin with, but as a friend, you'd be like, well, she's a friend, he's a friend. I'll look after the baby for a day or whatever. I mean. I think that's the case of shared responsibility. I mean, if they're your friend, if they're someone you care about, surely you want to help them. It's not a case of like you have to or not. You should want to. In a case where you're anti-abortion and you know this woman is struggling, surely you should want to help her and want to make sure that baby has the best life possible. I mean, not the best life, but like easier life than it would have done.
Okay, that's a good point. That's with social responsibility.
Well, there's also social responsibility with Hillsborough and Grenfell, like politicians and so on. And in this case of Hillsborough, people just didn't want to deal with it. Like, that's why you're telling me they're more worried about their public image rather than.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I find silly. I mean, like, people have died. I mean, like, they're not going to. We don't have the death penalty here. They're not going to die. What happened? Their stock prices go down here and there.
Perhaps it was more complicated than that. But yes, there were people accused of.
Yeah, but that's the annoying thing. If it's more complicated than that, surely I'm not saying you should be transparent about everything, but this is one of those situations where you should be.
Okay, and now to wrap up with when it comes to properties and buildings, of course there needs to be people in charge of those buildings would have the moral and legal responsibility to take care of them, so that if the people are being entertained or living within them, there'll be minimum risk of harm towards those people. No risk would be perfect, but minimum risk is ideal. And
they should tell people what they've done after.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any cover-ups, but most importantly, there should be, let's say if it's a place where people live, there should be health and safety checks to make sure that there's no, abrupt, spontaneous fire that could happen just because the building isn't properly protected against such things, such as fire or even water damage.
Yeah, talk about that building in Shepherd's Bush. That had a fire as well. Most of the building was burned, but no one died, to my knowledge. And then Hillsborough happened like 9 months later or whatever. That was 2016. Yeah, 2017. Yeah. In Shepherd's Bush, remember that building? I told you about that building that.
Yeah. Okay, I thought you said Hillsborough happened 9 months.
No, Grenfell. I meant to say Grenfell, Hillsborough. Sorry, I'm tongue-tied.
Okay,
Grenfell.
sure. And yes, and when it comes to abortion, of course, you could argue that the responsibility ultimately lies with the woman and nobody else. The person carrying the baby. Of course, there are many different sides to this. Some people would say, no, you shouldn't have abortion under any circumstances. Some people would say, okay, maybe if the product was a child of rape, then perhaps. Some people would say, oh, why don't you adopt? Why don't you give it up for adoption or put it into care?
I think at the end of the day, I think it's the woman's choice. But obviously, it's down to, in my case, it's down to me whether I choose to stay or not, or whether if she's had abortion.
If you were the partner of the pregnant person.
Yeah, but obviously, if she decides to have the baby, people around her, if they really care about it, they should help her out. And I think they should probably be. I'm guessing maybe the welfare system could be better in that situation, but that's a whole other issue. I don't know.
That is
that's about funding and stuff. I don't know about it.
Okay. Well, obviously, we both agree that it is ultimately down to the woman and it's her body, her choice, but there are variables where people could argue either way.
There are variables after that. Basically, the woman makes a choice and the variables happen after.
Oh, well.
Yeah. We're done?
Okay. That should be it for our episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can look at the description box. There should be our social media and also any links to the sources that we got this information from.
Feel free to leave your opinion. This is not this is not a black and white topic, so it would be nice to see people talk about this.
Leave some feedback, tell us what you think.
And stay respectful, obviously.
Well, if there's anything you feel that we didn't talk about, or if we didn't go into too much depth into, or if we thought that we did well, if there's anything you want to discuss or talk about, leave a comment, talk about it. Thank you for watching and listening. This is bye from Hugh.
Bye from Ryan.
Yep. See you.
Bye.